Good morning everybody, welcome to Gigs and Guitars, and today is all about Gary Moore. Okay, so where do we start? I know, we'll start with the brew. Cracking. Anyway, moving on. So today we're here to talk about Gary Moore, Belfast guitarist, guitarist with Thin Lizzy, went his own kind of separate ways with his solo albums, and what I'm really here to talk about is not so much about his technical ability or his life in the world of guitars, but in terms of how he impacted upon my personal guitar playing. And that all began around about 1988 for me personally, and I'll tell you why. Before that, Appetite for Destruction was released, as did Slippery When Wet, Guns N' Roses, Bon Jovi. I was listening to those, I was learning guitar. I've already mentioned Whitesnake 1987, a very influential album with John Sykes on guitar that really did the business for me then. But having said that, I'll just move that over. Back in the day, I didn't know about Gary Moore. I knew about Thin Lizzy, but I didn't know about Gary Moore as being a person or a guitarist. And that changed when I got for my birthday a VHS video. If you can remember what those are, great big plastic thing, put it in your video recorder and play it, and you've got a very low resolution quality recording on your television set. Anyway, but on my birthday I received one of these, and it was Gary Moore live in Stockholm. I think that was about 1987 when that was filmed, and I thought, wow, what an incredible guitarist. He played tracks from his Wild Frontier album, which was Celtic rock. You know, it was in the similar kind of vein to Thin Lizzy, of course, but it's obviously Gary Moore doing his solo album thing. And one particular track is the track you've just heard me play at the beginning of this video, which is Empty Rooms. And I sat back and I watched this guitar solo right at the end of Empty Rooms from Stockholm in 1987, and I have to say, it blew me away at the time. And to be fair, every now and then I go back to that same track, I'll listen to it and I'll watch it, and I'm just overawed with the emotion, the passion, the guitar tone, the ability of Gary Moore to change his tone. And bear in mind, his guitar at the time was a Charvel Stratocaster S-type guitar with a single humbucker and a volume knob, and that was it. And he had a Floyd Rose tremolo on that guitar as well. And the tones he managed to get from that guitar during that solo just absolutely blew me away. And that is one track that I keep going back to every now and then, just to recap, just to play along to it. I mean, I can't play like Gary Moore, I try to, but I hope that I've learned something over the years from that track with Gary Moore, playing that style of guitar solo in the late 1980s. Just talking about Gary Moore, Gary Moore at the time appeared in various sort of guitarist magazines that I was reading back in the day, and Gary Moore was quite vocal about one or two things about the recording industry, including guitarists from America that went to university. I think it's called the Guitar Institute of Technology or something like that, where he said everybody that goes in there comes out sounding the same. That was his opinion. you know, and I think we know who he's all referring to, but he was quite a vocal kind of person. But when you look at Gary Moore's playing, you can see that it's got the emotion, it's got the feel, it's got the rawness to it. And when you sort of look back to his roots, and I'm going to show you a little thing I found in my cupboard earlier, and this is a 1969 edition, if you can see that. I'll just move over to my GoPro, there we go. And it's a 1969 edition of Fleetwood Mac, Peter Green, Need Your Love So Bad. Now that is where it all started. Gary Moore's roots are based within the blues, and indeed one of his biggest influences to himself was Peter Green from Fleetwood Mac. Obviously back in the day it was very much a blues band. Now, Peter Green was playing his 1959 Les Paul Standard Burst, which Gary Moore ended up acquiring. Now, there's lots of things on the internet about Gary Moore and his Gibson Les Paul Standard, and that was the guitar that Peter Green either gave to him or sold to him, or basically said, sell your guitar that you're currently using and give me what you got for that, which is where I think it really happened. But needless to say, Gary Moore ended up with Peter Green's Gibson Les Paul Standard, and that goes all the way back to the late 1960s. So moving on, Gary Moore progressed through his career with Thin Lizzy. He went solo, produced albums such as Wild Frontier, After the War, which is where I came into listening to him because of the video cassette I got from him playing live at Stockholm in the late 1980s. After the War, you can see on the cover of this single here, I don't know if you can see it or not, I might do a shot later of that, but that's his other 1959 Burst, and his affection to those guitars was happening in the late 1980s. So for example, he was doing all his rock music, his heavy Celtic rock, but in the background you've got tracks on, say for example, After the War, you've got The Messiah Will Come Again. You listen to that track, full of Les Paul, full of blues guitar inspired playing, and he just rips through that track with a lot of feel, a lot of emotion, a lot of tone, and you can hear the beginnings of his movements into, or should I say, back into the blues where he came from with the Peter Green, with Fleetwood Mac. So moving on quickly, a couple of years later, in 1990, he released Still Got the Blues. Now for me, that was a big album. I'll just pull out a single which I bought then. Here we are. Amazed I've still got these, to be honest. There we go. Gary Moore, Still Got the Blues. There's his Les Paul on the back. It was actually recorded in 1989, but it was released in 1990. And I was really beginning to listen to Gary Moore in a big way at that point. I was going back through his history of guitars and playing and his albums, and I remember going to the Still Got the Blues tour in Bradford with a group of friends, and we hired a car because our cars wouldn't get anywhere near it. It was a Vauxhall Astra, brand new, and we hired this car and we all crammed ourselves in it. We went to Bradford to watch Gary Moore. And one of the iconic things I remember was before the show started, all you could see on the blue dimly lit stage was the 1959 Les Paul Standard in the centre of the stage with a single spotlight pointing down to that guitar, and I was right at the very front with my mates, and I have to say it's one of the best gigs I've ever been to. Now obviously Gary Moore came on, he had the Midnight Blues Band playing as well, and he absolutely played a blinding gig, and it was basically all the way through that night. It was Les Paul, Marshall, probably a JTM series amplifier, and I couldn't see what effects pedals he had, so I didn't know anything about them then, and I've never heard anything like it in your life. And he played that night The Messiah Will Come Again all the way through from beginning to end. Now you must check that on YouTube because it is a stunning bit of guitar work from Gary, with, as I've said before, a lot of passion, a lot of feel. And for me, Gary Moore, with his string bending, his sustain, his use of vibrato, not over egging the pudding, so he'd put on a string bend and he'd gradually feed it in, unlike other guitarists that put loads in straight away, in an almost karaoke style singer's voice. We've all heard them. But Gary was brilliant with his pitch. So he'd bend the notes up with his double string bends, and he would bring that vibrato in nicely to a crescendo at the end and let it fade out, and he was attacking that guitar. But if you look at his guitar playing as well, it's not only his left hand that's doing a lot of hard work, it's his right hand as well, his picking style. But if you look closely, he's always on his volume control knob. He's always using his tone pots all the time, and you have to be quick to see it. This guy is rapid, and that's how he gets all the tone and feel from his guitar and all that emotion when he's playing. So, for example, if he's got a 1959 Les Paul Standard and a lead into a Marshall Bluesbreaker, that's probably all he needs. He might have an Ibanez Tube Screamer. I've read articles about him, and he likes to use the tube screamers. But basically, it's just a guitar, a lead, tube screamer into a Marshall Bluesbreaker, and that's how he gets his tone and his style, not from those bits of equipment, from mainly his fingers and his passion and the tonal ability he gets from his playing. So moving on quickly, Gary Moore with the Still Got the Blues album, 1990. The title track says it all, Still Got the Blues. What an incredible single. I've just shown you that just now. Guitar solo in that, it goes from emotion to emotion. Midway through the solo, you see him do a right hand toggle switch change from his neck pickup to his bridge pickup to sharpen that tone up, to give it more attack, more sustain. And as he progresses through the solo and he gets towards the end of the song, he's then backing it all off before he ends up with a nice little bit of a run at the end, particularly on the live versions, where he's back onto the neck pickup, turns the volume pot down, and he's gone for nice thick tones with a lot of feel and passion. And for me, that is a good thing about Gary Moore. He played with a lot of emotion, and those are the things that have stuck with me. I'm not into the high speed playing. I am an amateur guitarist. I'm not a professional. I like to do as much as I can, but if there's anybody that has inspired me to pick up the guitar properly and play it over the many years, we're talking 30 years here now, it has to be Gary Moore. And there is one other who I will cover in the next few episodes. I'm not going to disclose that now, but Gary Moore is definitely the one that inspired me to play the way that I'm doing now, and that's why I like in the bands I've played in, particularly like the Cooper Collective, if there's a guitar solo that's quite long within a particular song, that's where I'm coming from. My guitar solos are coming from 1969, from Peter Green through to the current day. Gary Moore unfortunately died. He has left us. There's lots of articles that have been written about Gary Moore. He's sold a number of his guitars in the last couple of years. One of those, which is the Peter Green Les Paul, ended up in the hands of the guitarist from Metallica. I'll put a little clip on in a minute because he's just released some stuff with Metallica during the lockdown, and at least that guitar is being used and it's being played, which is really good. Sounds like dinner time. When Gary Moore was recording the Still Got the Blues tour and the album after that, which was called After Hours, Gary Moore played with Albert King. There's mention of Albert Collins and Albert Lee. In fact, everybody seems to be called Albert or King. So you've got Albert King, and you've also got B.B. King. You know, so he's played with all the greats, as you will. So Gary Moore, during his career, has come full circle, and there's lots of great stuff on YouTube to have a look at. But if you just sit back and just use his style to improve parts of your playing, you really can't go wrong. He can play at 1,000,000 miles an hour, can Gary Moore, and he can pick every single note, and he can do that with passion. That is unique to Gary. For me, I try and do that, but I can't. And if there's anything people can learn from Gary's playing, is that the emotion is there and the feel is there, the phrasing is there during his playing, and that's what I've taken from it. Thanks for watching, subscribe, hit the bell button, and we'll see you next time.